The bustling halls of the Galactic Council were a sight to behold. Representatives from countless alien civilizations gathered here, their vibrant robes and imposing statures reflecting the diversity of the cosmos. Animated discussions and negotiations filled the air as these galactic leaders worked to maintain the fragile balance of power. On this day, the council chambers were especially abuzz with activity. Rumors had been circulating for some time about a previously unknown species from a remote planet called Earth. But now, concrete information had finally reached the ears of the assembled delegates, and it was nothing short of shocking. Thumring, a seasoned Garloxian ambassador, cleared his throat and stepped forward, his tentacles quivering with a mix of trepidation and curiosity. Honored colleagues, I have received a most disturbing report from our intelligence networks. His bulbous eyes scanned the room, meeting the expectant gazes of his peers. It seems this Earth has unveiled advanced technologies and military capabilities that rival our own. Their weapons and spacecraft designs defy everything we believed possible for a species at their level of development. Murmurs of disbelief and concern rippled through the chamber. The Galactic Council prided itself on maintaining a strict hierarchy, with the most technologically and militarily superior civilizations holding the greatest influence. The very idea that an unknown, seemingly primitive world could possess such remarkable capabilities threatened to upend the delicate balance they had so carefully cultivated. Silara, the stern-faced Cyanthian representative, raised a clawed hand to silence the growing chatter. This cannot be possible. Our intelligence networks are the most comprehensive in the galaxy. How could we have missed the rise of such a formidable power? Thumring's tentacles twisted nervously. I'm afraid the details are still vague, but the report indicates that the humans of Earth have been concealing the true extent of their technological prowess. They seem to have developed advanced propulsion systems, energy weaponry, and even the ability to manipulate the very fabric of space-time. The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of shouts and protests. Delegates from the major galactic powers demanded immediate action, while others advocated for a more cautious approach, fearing the potential consequences of provoking an unknown entity. Amidst the chaos, the towering figure of Groloth, the Archduke of the Xyloth Empire, rose from his ornate chair, commanding the room's attention with a mere gesture. Silence. His deep, rumbling voice echoed through the chamber, cutting through the din. This is a most grave development, one that threatens the very foundation of our galactic order. We must convene an emergency session to determine the appropriate response. The other delegates fell silent, their expressions ranging from trepidation to outright fear. Groloth's words carried the weight of authority, for the Xyloth Empire was one of the most powerful and influential civilizations in the known galaxy. As the council members took their seats, a hush fell over the chamber. The implications of this new revelation were staggering. A species from a backwater planet had somehow managed to develop technologies that rivaled, or even surpassed, those of the galactic superpowers. The very thought sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned diplomats and military strategists. Groloth's gaze swept across the room, his piercing eyes meeting those of his fellow delegates. We must act swiftly and decisively. The security of our civilizations, the very fabric of our galactic order, is at stake. I propose we dispatch an envoy to this Earth immediately to assess the extent of their capabilities and determine the nature of their intentions. The other delegates nodded in reluctant agreement, their own expressions betraying the unease that had settled over the chamber. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, a previously unknown species had shaken the very foundations of their established order, and the path forward was shrouded in uncertainty. As the council members began to debate the specifics of their response, a palpable tension filled the air. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the representatives knew that the choices they made in the coming days would shape the course of history for generations to come. The air in the Galactic Council chambers crackled with tension as the delegates waited anxiously for the arrival of the Earth representatives. After the startling revelations about the planet's advanced capabilities, the other civilizations were on edge, unsure of what to expect from this previously obscure species. Finally, the grand doors swung open, and a delegation of humans strode into the chamber. At their head was a tall, imposing figure with a steely gaze and a commanding presence. This was Samantha Ivanova, the human envoy tasked with representing Earth's interests before the Galactic Council. As Ivanova approached the central dais, the whispering and murmuring among the delegates quickly died down. All eyes were fixed on the human representative, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Ivanova cleared her throat and addressed the council in a clear, unwavering voice. Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, I come before you today on behalf of the people of Earth. We have been observing your proceedings for some time, and we can no longer remain silent. The delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, uncertain of where this bold declaration might lead. It has come to our attention that your council has long neglected the interests and potential of smaller, less developed civilizations. You have maintained a rigid hierarchy, favoring the most technologically advanced and militarily powerful species, while leaving others to languish in relative obscurity. Groloth, the Archduke of the Xyloth Empire, leaned forward, his deep voice rumbling with a mixture of annoyance and curiosity. And what, pray tell, does this have to do with your planet's sudden emergence as a galactic power? Ivanova met Groloth's gaze unflinchingly. It has everything to do with it. We, the people of Earth, have grown tired of being overlooked and dismissed by this council. We possess the technological and military might to stand alongside the greatest civilizations in the galaxy, and we demand that our rightful place be recognized. Gasps of astonishment echoed through the chamber. The audacity of the human's words was unprecedented, challenging the very foundations of the Galactic Council's established order. Silara, the Xyanthian representative, stood up, her claws clicking together in a gesture of displeasure. You have the gall to come before us and make such outrageous demands. Your planet has only recently been discovered, and you have the nerve to claim a seat at this table. Ivanova remained unfazed, her lips curving into a slight smile. Oh, but we do. Earth has been concealing the true extent of our capabilities, and now we are ready to take our rightful place among the stars. We demand full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and privileges that come with it. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of shouts and protests. The delegates were clearly taken aback by the human's audacity, and many were unwilling to even consider granting such a request. Groloth raised a hand, silencing the din. This is a most unexpected development. We will need time to deliberate on your proposal. In the meantime, you and your delegation will remain as our guests, so that we may better understand the true nature of your species and your claims. Ivanova inclined her head in acknowledgement, her gaze unwavering. We appreciate your consideration, Archduke, but let me be clear, we will not be deterred. Earth's place in the galaxy has been secured, and we will stop at nothing to ensure that it is recognized. As the human delegation was escorted from the chamber, the Galactic Council members exchanged uneasy glances. The future of the galaxy had been irrevocably altered, and they now faced the daunting task of determining how to respond to this bold challenge from the upstart world of Earth. The Galactic Council chambers were abuzz with heated discussions and debates as the delegates struggled to reach a consensus on how to respond to the human delegation's bold demands. Groloth, the Archduke of the Xyloth Empire, paced before the assembled representatives, his brow furrowed in deep contemplation. This is an unprecedented situation. The humans of Earth have clearly demonstrated capabilities that rival our own, and they have the audacity to demand full membership in our council. Silara, the Xyanthian delegate, crossed her clawed arms over her chest, her expression one of deep skepticism. And why should we even consider granting their request? They are an unknown quantity, a species that has managed to conceal its true power for who knows how long. How can we trust that they will abide by our council's rules and regulations? Thumring, the Garloxian ambassador, tentacles twitching nervously, spoke up. I must agree with Xylara. The very thought of welcoming this upstart civilization into our ranks is deeply unsettling. Our council has maintained a delicate balance of power for millennia, and the introduction of such a wild card could upset that balance irreparably. The murmurs of agreement from the other delegates echoed through the chamber, underscoring the widespread resistance to the humans' demands. Graloth raised a hand, silencing the room. I understand your concerns, my esteemed colleagues, but we must also consider the potential consequences of denying the humans' request. Their technological prowess is undeniable, and they have already demonstrated a willingness to challenge our authority. We cannot simply ignore them or dismiss their claims. Silara's eyes narrowed. Then what do you propose, Archduke? That we simply hand over the keys to the galaxy to these humans? Graloff shook his head slowly. Not at all. But perhaps we could consider a compromise. A provisional membership with strict conditions and limitations until we can fully assess the extent of their capabilities and intentions. The other delegates exchanged uncertain glances, the weight of Graloff's words hanging in the air. The idea of granting the humans even a tentative foothold within the Galactic Council was deeply unsettling, but the alternative, the potential for open conflict with this newfound power, was equally daunting. Finally, Fumring spoke up, his tentacles unfurling in a gesture of begrudging acceptance. As much as it pains me to say this, the Archduke's proposal may be our best course of action. We cannot simply dismiss the humans outright, not when they have demonstrated such formidable might. A provisional membership, with close monitoring and strict guidelines, may be the prudent path forward. Silara's expression betrayed her discomfort, but she nodded slowly. Very well. If the majority agrees, then we shall extend a provisional invitation to the humans, with the understanding that they will be closely observed and held to the highest standards of our council. Graloff's gaze swept over the assembled delegates, his expression grave. Then it is settled. We shall convene a special session to present our terms to the human delegation. May the stars grant us the wisdom to navigate this delicate situation with the utmost care. As the council members began to file out of the chamber, a palpable sense of unease hung in the air. The introduction of the human civilization into the galactic community was a momentous and perilous event, one that would undoubtedly reshape the course of history in ways that none of them could yet foresee. As the human delegation took their seats within the Galactic Council chambers, a hush fell over the assembled delegates. All eyes were fixed upon Samantha Ivanova, the lead representative from Earth, who surveyed the room with a calm, measured gaze. Ivanova rose from her seat, her movements fluid and confident. Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, we thank you for granting us this provisional membership. It is a momentous step, and one that we do not take lightly. Graloth, the Archduke of the Xyloth Empire, inclined his head in acknowledgement. We appreciate your cooperation, human. However, you must understand that this is a probationary period, and your continued presence here will be contingent upon your adherence to our council's policies and regulations. Ivanova's lips curved into a slight smile. Of course, Archduke, and it is precisely those policies and regulations that I wish to discuss. The other delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the undercurrent of challenge in the human's words. In our observations of this council's proceedings, we have noticed a disturbing trend. Time and time again, the decisions made here have consistently favored the interests of the most technologically and militarily advanced civilizations, often at the expense of smaller or less developed worlds. Silara, the Xianthian representative, bristled at the accusation. How dare you make such bold claims? The Galactic Council exists to maintain order and stability throughout the galaxy. Our decisions are made with the utmost care and consideration for the greater good. Ivanova met Silara's glare unflinchingly. Is that so? Then explain to me why the Xianthian Empire has been granted exclusive mining rights to the Helios asteroid belt, despite the protests of the nearby Groxian colonies who rely on those resources for their survival. Gasps of surprise and murmurs of discontent rippled through the chamber. The other delegates exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions betraying a growing sense of discomfort. Graloth raised a hand, his deep voice rumbling. These are complex matters, human. The Galactic Council must balance the needs and interests of all its member civilizations. It is not always possible to satisfy every request. Ivanova's gaze did not waver, and yet, time and time again, it is the smaller, less powerful worlds that seem to bear the brunt of your council's complex decisions. Is this truly the vision of a fair and just galactic order that you claim to uphold? The chamber descended into a tense silence, the delegates shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Ivanova's words had struck a nerve, exposing the underlying biases and inequalities that had long been the foundation of the Galactic Council's governance. Tilara, her claws clicking together in agitation, leaned forward. You dare to question the integrity of this council? We have maintained peace and stability across the galaxy for millennia. What could a primitive species like yours possibly understand about the nuances of galactic politics? Ivanova's expression hardened. We understand far more than you give us credit for, Kyathian, and we will not remain silent in the face of injustice, no matter how deeply entrenched it may be within your precious council. The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with the weight of the humans' defiant words. For the first time, the delegates of the Galactic Council found themselves confronted with a challenge to the very foundations of their authority, and they were unsure of how to respond. As the session drew to a close, Groloth's gaze swept across the chamber, his expression grave. It would seem we have much to discuss, human. The future of this council, and indeed the entire galactic order, hangs in the balance. I suggest we adjourn for now, and reconvene at the earliest convenience to address these concerns. Ivanova nodded, her eyes gleaming with a resolute determination. Very well, Archduke, we shall await your summons, but I assure you, we will not be silenced, no matter the consequences. The tensions within the Galactic Council chambers had been steadily mounting ever since the arrival of the human delegation. Samantha Ivanova's bold challenge to the Council's policies and decision-making processes had struck a nerve, exposing the underlying biases and inequalities that had long been the foundation of the galactic order. As the delegates convened for another session, the air was thick with apprehension. Groloth, the Archduke of the Xyloth Empire, cleared his throat, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. We are gathered here today to address the concerns raised by our human colleagues. It is clear that there are differences in perspective that must be overcome if we are to maintain the stability and cohesion of this council. Ivanova, her expression poised and unwavering, rose from her seat. Archduke Groloth, we appreciate your willingness to engage in these discussions. However, as we have made clear, the time for empty platitudes and half-measures has passed. The people of Earth demand true and meaningful reform within this council. Silara, the Xyathian representative, let out a derisive snort. Reform. You speak as if you have the authority to dictate the terms of our governance. Need I remind you that your presence here is a privilege, not a right? Ivanova's gaze narrowed, her jaw setting in a determined line. That is where you are mistaken, Xyathian. We have earned our place at this table through the very capabilities that have threatened your precious status quo, and we will not be silenced, no matter the consequences. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of shouts and protests, the other delegates clearly unsettled by the humans' unyielding stance. Groloth raised a hand, his expression etched with a mixture of frustration and concern. Enough. This bickering is achieving nothing. We must find a way to address the humans' concerns in a constructive manner, for the good of the entire galactic community. As the council members began to debate potential avenues for compromise, a sudden commotion erupted outside the chamber doors. Shouts and the sounds of a scuffle quickly drew the attention of the delegates, who turned just in time to see the human delegation being dragged from the room, their advanced technology confiscated. Ivanova's eyes widened in shock and fury as she struggled against the grip of the Xyloth security officers. What is the meaning of this? You dare to betray us, after we have come here in good faith. Groloth's expression hardened, his tentacles coiling in a gesture of regret. I had no choice, human. The Council has determined that your presence poses a threat to the stability of the galactic order. Your technology and influence must be contained. Solara stepped forward, her claws gleaming with a malicious edge. You have been weighed and found wanting, Earthling. Your defiance has sealed your fate. Now, you and your kind will be relegated to the status you so rightfully deserve, that of a primitive, insignificant species, forever barred from the true power of the cosmos. As the human delegation was dragged away, Ivanova's anguished cries echoed through the chamber, silencing the other delegates. The weight of their betrayal hung heavy in the air, the implications of their actions casting a dark shadow over the future of the Galactic Council. Groloth's gaze swept across the room, his expression grim. We have taken a grave step today, my fellow council members. The consequences of our actions will reverberate throughout the galaxy, of that I have no doubt. I can only hope that we have not sown the seeds of our own downfall. The news of the human delegation's brutal assault and the confiscation of their advanced technology spread like wildfire across the galaxy. On the distant planet of Earth, the reaction was one of outrage and determination. President Mikhail Volkov, the steely-eyed leader of the human civilization, convened an emergency session of his top military and scientific advisors. The betrayal of the Galactic Council had struck a deep chord within the people of Earth, and they were now more resolute than ever in their quest for justice. They have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed, Volkov growled, his fist clenching in a gesture of barely contained fury. The Galactic Council thinks they can simply dismiss us, treat us like insignificant upstarts. But they will soon learn the true might of the human race. The advisors in the room exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the palpable tension radiating from their leader. Volkov's reputation for decisive and uncompromising action was well known, and they knew that he would not rest until the Council's betrayal had been avenged. Mr. President, our analysts have been studying the capabilities of the Galactic Council forces. One of the advisors, a brilliant young scientist named Akiko Tanaka, spoke up. While they possess formidable technology, we believe our own advancements in areas like directed energy weapons and quantum-entangled communication systems can give us a decisive edge. Volkov's eyes narrowed, a glimmer of satisfaction flickering across his features. Excellent. Mobilize our military forces, Akiko. I want every available asset deployed to the edges of our solar system, ready to strike at a moment's notice. The other advisors nodded in agreement, their expressions resolute. They knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger, but the thirst for vengeance had ignited a fire within the hearts of the human people. As the military preparations commenced, a sense of unease began to spread through the Galactic Council chambers. Groloth, the Archduke of the Xyloth Empire, paced before the assembled delegates, his tentacles twitching with a mixture of concern and apprehension. The humans have not responded to our communiques. This silence is most troubling. We must consider the possibility that they are planning some form of retaliatory action. Solara, the Xianthian representative, scoffed dismissively. Retaliatory action. Against the combined might of the Galactic Council. Preposterous. Those primitive apes should be grateful that we have spared their lives, rather than launching a full-scale invasion of their pathetic planet. Groloth's gaze hardened. Do not underestimate the humans. Their technology has already proven capable of matching our own, and their determination is evident in the way they have challenged our authority. We would be wise to tread carefully. Before Solara could respond, a sudden alarm blared through the council chambers, sending the delegates into a frenzy of confusion and panic. Sensors detect a massive fleet of human vessels amassing at the edge of our territory, one of the technicians announced, her voice trembling with urgency. Their weapon systems are powering up, and they appear to be on an intercept course. Groloth's eyes widened, his tentacles coiling in a gesture of dread. Activate the planetary defense grids and scramble all available forces. We must hold the line against this human onslaught. But even as the Council's forces rushed to their battle stations, a sense of foreboding crept into the hearts of the delegates. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, they faced the prospect of a true, unrelenting challenge to their dominance, one that had been forged in the fires of their own betrayal. The skies above the Galactic Council's central hub were ablaze with the fury of battle. The human armada, unleashed from the edges of the Council's territory, had descended upon the domain of the established galactic powers with a relentless ferocity. Graloth, the Archduke of the Xyloth Empire, watched with growing alarm as the massive human warships tore through the Council's defensive perimeter, their advanced weaponry cutting a swath of destruction through the once formidable armada. How is this possible? The Archduke murmured, his tentacles coiling in a gesture of disbelief. Our forces were supposed to be superior, our technology unmatched. Yet the humans are cutting through them as if they were nothing more than insects. Silara, the Xyanthian representative, stood beside him, her claws clicking together in a mixture of fear and rage. This cannot be happening. We are the guardians of the galactic order, the pinnacle of power and civilization. These upstarts from a backwater planet cannot be allowed to disrupt the balance we have so carefully maintained. The chamber echoed with the frantic calls of the Council's technicians, relaying reports of system failures and crumbling defenses. The once confident delegates were now gripped by a growing sense of panic, their expressions betraying the realization that their assumptions of superiority had been shattered. Graloth turned to face the assembled delegates, his voice laced with a rare hint of desperation. We must coordinate a counterattack, rally our remaining forces. If we work together, we can still push back the human onslaught and restore order to the galaxy. But the other delegates were too consumed by their own fears to heed the Archduke's call. Xylara's claws slashed through the air, her face twisted in a snarl. Coordinate? With these barbarians? Never. We should be focusing our efforts on evacuating our homeworlds, not engaging in some futile last stand. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of shouts and protests, the delegates descending into a state of disarray and infighting. Graloth watched in dismay as the Council's unity crumbled before his eyes, the very foundation of their power now reduced to rubble. Outside the Council chambers, the human armada continued its inexorable advance, their weapon systems pulverizing the remaining defenses with devastating precision. The once formidable fleet of the Galactic Council was being torn apart, its ships reduced to drifting debris in the void of space. Samantha Ivanova, her expression grim but resolute, stood on the bridge of the human flagship, her eyes fixed on the unfolding chaos. The time for reckoning has come, my fellow Earthlings. We will show these arrogant council members the true price of their betrayal. With a nod, she issued the order to intensify the assault, and the human forces surged forward, their devastating firepower leaving no quarter for the desperate council members. As the battle raged on, the Galactic Council chambers descended into a state of utter pandemonium. Delegates scrambled to evacuate, their cries of terror echoing through the halls as they realized the futility of their resistance. Graloth, his once imposing figure now hunched with the weight of defeat, watched the unfolding carnage with a mixture of resignation and dread. "The galaxy is lost," he whispered, his tentacles drooping in a gesture of hopelessness. "We have brought this upon ourselves, and now we must face the consequences." The human armada continued its relentless advance, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. As the dust settled, the once unassailable Galactic Council lay in ruins, its authority and dominance shattered by the overwhelming might of the human civilization. The once proud Galactic Council, a bastion of power and influence across the galaxy, now lay in ruins. The relentless onslaught of the human forces had left their defenses shattered, their fleets decimated, and their delegates gripped by a palpable sense of fear and desperation. Graloth, the once formidable Archduke of the Xyloth Empire, stood before the remaining council members, his tentacles trembling with a mixture of resignation and dread. "My fellow delegates, I have no choice but to call for a ceasefire. We cannot withstand the human assault any longer. Our forces are in disarray, and our homeworlds are under threat of complete annihilation. Zilara, the Xyanthian representative, recoiled as if she had been struck. A ceasefire? You dare to suggest such a thing? We are the Galactic Council, the guardians of the cosmic order. We do not surrender to the whims of some upstart civilization. Grolof's gaze met Zilara's, his expression grim. And yet, that is precisely what we must do. Zilara. The humans have demonstrated a level of technological and military prowess that we simply cannot match. To continue this conflict would be nothing short of suicidal for our people. The other delegates erupted in a cacophony of protests and objections, their voices mingling in a desperate attempt to reject the Archduke's proposal. But as the reports of further losses and the approaching human armada continued to pour in, the weight of Grolof's words began to sink in. Samantha Ivanova, the human representative, stood with her arms crossed, her expression a mask of steely determination. The time for your excuses and empty posturing is over, Galactic Council. You have two choices: accept our terms for a ceasefire, or face total annihilation. Groloth raised a tentacle, silencing the chamber. And what, pray tell, are these terms you speak of, human? Ivanova's lips curved into a humorless smile. Firstly, you will grant Earth full and permanent membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and privileges that come with it. Secondly, you will cede control of the Helios asteroid belt to the Groxian colonies, as well as several other resource-rich regions that have long been exploited by the more powerful civilizations. The delegates exchanged horrified glances, the magnitude of the humans' demands sinking in. Zilara's claws clicked together in a gesture of outrage. You cannot be serious. These terms are utterly unacceptable. We will never submit to such humiliating concessions. Ivanova's gaze hardened. Then you will be responsible for the annihilation of your own people. The choice is yours, Galactic Council. Groloth raised a tentacle, silencing Zilara's protests. We have no choice. The human forces are too powerful, our defenses too severely crippled. We must accept their terms, for the sake of our civilizations. Zilara's eyes widened in horror, but the other delegates, their expressions etched with a mixture of resignation and defeat, nodded in reluctant agreement. As the ceasefire terms were finalized and the human delegation departed, a heavy silence fell over the Galactic Council chambers. The once dominant civilizations had been brought to their knees, their authority and influence now subject to the whims of the human upstarts. Grolof's tentacles coiled in a gesture of utter despair. We have lost more than just this conflict, my friends. We have lost the very foundation upon which our galactic order was built. The future is now shrouded in uncertainty, and the path ahead is perilous. The other delegates could only nod in somber agreement, their pride and confidence shattered by the humbling defeat they had suffered at the hands of the human civilization. The balance of power in the galaxy had been irrevocably altered, and the Galactic Council now faced the daunting task of redefining its role in a new, uncertain era. The echoes of the fierce battles that had ravaged the galaxy still lingered in the halls of the Galactic Council. Yet, amidst the ruins of the once dominant civilizations, a new era was dawning, one marked by the undeniable influence of the human delegation. Samantha Ivanova, the steely-eyed representative from Earth, stood at the center of the council chambers, her gaze sweeping across the gathered delegates. The air of trepidation and resentment that had once permeated the room had been replaced by a grudging sense of respect, tinged with a hint of uncertainty. My fellow council members, Ivanova began, her voice clear and unwavering. The events of the past cycles have changed the course of galactic history. We have all borne witness to the consequences of maintaining a rigid and unjust system of governance. But today, we have the opportunity to forge a new path, one that embraces the diversity and potential of all civilizations, not just the privileged few. Groloth, the Archduke of the Zilov Empire, stepped forward, his tentacles uncoiling in a gesture of acknowledgement. You speak true words, human. The Galactic Council has much to answer for, and we have been humbled by the events that have transpired. We can no longer cling to the old ways, not if we are to ensure the continued prosperity and security of our people. Silara, the Xanthian representative, her claws still clenched in a faint sign of resentment, reluctantly nodded in agreement. As much as it pains me to admit, the humans have demonstrated a level of foresight and resolve that we have long lacked. If we are to move forward, we must be willing to embrace the changes that they have wrought. The other delegates, their expressions a mix of reluctance and cautious optimism, began to nod in assent, sensing the shifting tide of power within the council chambers. Ivanova's lips curved into a slight smile. Then let us begin the process of rebuilding the Galactic Council, with the humans taking a central role in shaping its future. We have much work to do, but together, I believe we can create a more just and equitable system of governance, one that serves the needs of all civilizations, not just the most powerful. In the days and weeks that followed, the Galactic Council underwent a profound transformation. The human delegation, once viewed as upstart intruders, now stood as influential and respected members, their voice carrying weight in the council's deliberations. Graloth, now assuming a more collaborative role, worked closely with Ivanova and her team to restructure the council's decision-making processes, ensuring that the interests of smaller and less developed civilizations were given equal consideration. Silara, though still wary of the humans' influence, gradually began to recognize the merits of their proposed reforms. As the Council's policies and initiatives shifted to address long-standing inequalities, the Xanthian representative found herself begrudgingly admitting the wisdom of the changes. The galaxy, once divided by the rigid hierarchies and power struggles of the old order, now looked towards a future of greater cooperation and mutual understanding. The human civilization, once dismissed as a primitive upstart, had firmly established itself as a dominant force, its technological and military prowess now respected and even emulated by the other council members. As the dust settled, Ivanova stood alongside Graloth and Silara, their expressions reflecting a newfound sense of unity and purpose. The Galactic Council, once a bastion of the privileged elite, had been reborn, with the human voice echoing through its halls, shaping the course of interstellar politics and exploration for generations to come.